So in the inferential test, we have different types. It can be comparative, or the test can be correlational in nature. So that's actually um, the aim of most research. So in many researches, we have certain tests for comparison and tests of correlation. So if you want to find the significant difference in the outcomes of a certain group, then you will utilize the comparative test. So in the correlational test, if you want to determine the link between two or more variables or the effect of one variable to another, then you can utilize the correlational test. But today, we will be performing first the comparative analysis. So isa-isahin natin ito so that at least every meeting, I can introduce to you two statistical tools that can be very useful not only in research but even in your organization. If you have a lot of data, you can utilize the data to perform analysis for decision making or a certain intervention program based on the results of analysis. So in the correlational test, in comparative tests, we have parametric and non-parametric testing. So parametric tests, these are robust tests. These are more powerful as compared to non-parametric tests. But this particular parametric tests have strict assumptions. There are criteria that must be met before this particular test can be applied. So in the comparative and correlational tests, we have certain tests for using parametric and tests using the non-parametric um, analysis. But always remember, as what I have mentioned, parametric test is more robust as compared to non-parametric. But non-parametric is an alternative if the assumptions of parametric are not met. So not all the time that we can utilize the parametric test because there are lot of assumptions in the nature of data, um, the scales of measurement of the IV and the DV, and at the same time, the assumption of normality if the data are normally distributed. We all know that a normal distribution in a bell-shaped curve, in the Gaussian distribution, dapat bell-shaped siya, not too peak or not too flat yung curve. If too peak and too flat, then there could be a problem on the skewness and the kurtosis. So it should be symmetrical. What is in the left was also in the right. So a measure of symmetry and flatness or peak of the data is actually one of the important assumption of the parametric testing. Kasi itong parametric test, there is a condition that the data must be normally distributed. If the data is not normal, then we cannot utilize the parametric testing. Else, you can perform the non-parametric equivalent. So in the correlation analysis, we have common parametric testing like the Pearson R, okay, the Pearson R, the linear regression, okay, analysis. So these are common parametric tests and the non-parametric tests for correlation. We have the Spearman-Rho, okay, the Spearman-Rho, or even chi-square, chi-square test, and some other analysis for non-parametric tests. But all of these particular tests, you will experience this one. At the same time, you will be performing software applications. So I'll be giving demonstration of this particular test utilizing the just JASP software. But if you have SPSS software in your laptop or computer, I will also give you lecture videos on how to perform these different tests in SPSS. So you have the option, we can utilize the JASP, and we can also utilize the um, SPSS software. So we will start first with parametric tests, comparative analysis using parametric tests, the independent t-test and the ANOVA. There are a lot of t-tests. We have independent t-tests, we have paired sample t-tests, we also have one sample t-test. If you want to compare a certain mean to a certain standard, then you will use the one sample test. If you are doing a pre-test, post-test, or from the baseline and the post-test, for example, in your company, you are conducting an intervention program, like if you want to reduce the stress of the employees, you can conduct a baseline analysis on the stress level of the employees. Then after which you will perform a program like Zumba or any kind of recreation program for how many weeks, for example. And then after the program have been conducted, you wanted to know the stress level of your employees. And you will compare the baseline and the post-test after the intervention, after the program. And if there is a significant decrease in the stress level, then your program is most likely effective in reducing the stress. So in that particular case, in if you want to um, determine the significant difference between pre-test and post-test of similar group, then you will utilize the paired sample t-test. But if you want to compare two independent groups, dalawang independent group, then you will use the independent t-test and ANOVA, in which ito yung gagamitin natin ngayon na analysis, including the software application. So, um, in the independent t-test, there are, in the research question or in the statement of the problem, this is how to frame the statement of the problem utilizing comparative tests. So you can see the word difference because we wanted to compare. Like for example, is there a significant difference in the satisfaction of customers when analyzed according to sex and educational attainment? So for this particular comparative analysis, we have certain variables involved. So the variables include satisfaction of customers. This is the outcome or the dependent variable. This is the thing that we wanted to compare. Okay. The outcome, which is the customer satisfaction um, among a certain group. Okay. When group or when analyzed according to sex and educational attainment. The independent variables here are the sex and educational attainment. These are qualitative variables. These are categorical variables, male and female, that sex, educational attainment, elementary, high school, and college. So you know already that in a qualitative variable, we will be utilizing um, we will assign values of this qualitative variable, just like what you did in the descriptive analysis. You assign, for example, 0 for male, 1 for female. So because these are qualitative variables, so a certain value is assigned so that we can determine that that is the group that we are referring with. So for independent t-tests, we have certain assumptions. Assumptions, this must be met before we can utilize this particular test. So hindi basta-basta that you can just utilize a certain independent t-test or ANOVA without following as an assumption. So the independent t-test, um, it is a statistical tool, okay, that is used to compare the means between two unrelated groups on the same continuous dependent variable. Our dependent variable is the satisfaction of customers. And we measure that one using mean So if that is a mean, then we consider that dependent variable as continuous. It is interval or ratio in measurement. Okay, that's continuous. When I say continuous variable, it can be interval or ratio. So always consider that. So we wanted to compare the means of two unrelated groups. When we talk about sex, there are two groups. We have the male and we have the female. So we wanted to know, for example, pag t-test kasi dalawang group ang gina-compare dyan. We wanted to know the satisfaction of male and satisfaction of female. We wanted to compare if there is a significant difference in their level of satisfaction. Mas mataas ba, significant ba, or not significant? It depends upon the results of analysis. So as what I have mentioned, there are assumptions that must be met if you will utilize the independent t-test because this is a parametric test. Okay? So the first assumption, the dependent variable should be measured on a continuous scale. So again, if I will say continuous scale, it can be interval or ratio. Okay? So interval or ratio, like for example, variables like time measured in hours, intelligence can be measured in IQ score, okay? The examination performance, like the percentile score or the percentage score, percentage equivalent, the weight, the height. So these are continuous variable, interval or ratio. The assumption number two, your independent variable should consist of two categorical independent groups. Two groups. Like for example, gender or sex, we have two groups, male or female. There are a lot of groupings. For example, if you want to compare employment status, employed or unemployed. Okay? If you want to know if a person is smoker, yes or no. Smoker or non-smoker. So that's a categorical variable. Two groups only. So in our case, is there a significant difference in the satisfaction of customer when grouped according to sex? So meron tayong dalawang grupo dito, sex. And we have also educational attainment, tatlong grupo, elementary, high school, and college. So ang independent t-test is used to compare two groups. So magagamit natin siya in the sex component or sex category. So the next assumption, although I have not placed that one, but the assumption is that the data should have independent observations, which means that there is no relationship between the observation in each group or between the group themselves. And aside from that, there should be no significant outliers. Outliers, these are data points within your data that do not follow the usual pattern. So for example, in the performance in our class, if majority of the students are within the range of 80 to 85 percentage, but there is one who have a score of 90, then we can consider that one as an outlier. It does not follow the usual pattern when it comes to scores. So there are some cases that possible outlier happen. It can be caused by encoding error. For example, if we encode the Likert scale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 is strongly agree, 1 is strongly disagree. But there are some data entry that in which we made a double entry, like instead of 5, we encoded it 55. So that will become an outlier because in the usual pattern, it is in the range of 1 to 5. But there is a score of 55 because of the encoding error, then it will be detected as an outlier in the study. There are some cases also that some of the participants or respondents are not answering properly well the questionnaire. So yung iba, ang ginagawa nila is they will just select, especially kung ginarate, for example, leadership styles. Tapos, the person is somewhat connected to a person to be evaluated. So, ang gagawin, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. So, wala nang basa-basa ng questionnaire that may result of a higher score in which it does not follow usual pattern. So, the outliers can be detected in the software. And if our participants or the sample size is big, we can remove outliers. But if the sample size is small, it's very difficult that we will remove an outlier because it will affect the results. Okay, there could be certain effect because we have smaller data. So aside from outlier, the DV, okay, so the dependent variable should be approximately normally distributed for each group of the independent variable. So kung sex siya, dapat ang kanyang um, distribution is normal. Okay, and we can test for normality. Okay, so if these assumptions can be met, then we can perform the independent t-test. So to perform independent t-test using the JASP software, this is what you're going to do. I'll open the JASP. This is our, okay. So let's go to the data. So this is our data. We have our research question. Is there a significant difference in the level of satisfaction when grouped according to sex? Okay, so we have two groups here. So we can utilize the independent t-test. Assuming that the data is normally distributed. Kasi ilan lang ito? There are only 27 participants. So in a smaller sample size, sometimes it cannot meet the normal distribution. But let's just assume that the data is normally distributed. So to analyze using t-test, you click this analysis t-test. We have classical and the Bayesian. You will use the classical independent sample t-test. And then we will place the grouping, the sex in the grouping variable dito sa baba. And the satisfaction in the variables version. Yan. And then, we can check the descriptive so that we can determine the mean and the standard deviation. The mean and standard deviation per group. You can see in the second table here that male have a mean of 3.95 and female have a mean of 3.22. So, meron siyang certain variance. Okay? Yung male is 3.95 and female is 3.22. But this is just descriptive statistics per group. In order to know whether they are really significantly different from each other, then you have to look at the first table, yung independent sample t-test. So in the independent sample t-test, we have the t-value, the df, the degrees of freedom, and the p, which is the p-value or the probability value. You have to look at the p-value or the p. Okay? If the p-value is above 0.05, then it is not significant. They are not significantly different. Okay? If the p-value is less than 0.05, less than or equal to 0.05, then there is a significant difference. Based on our result, the p-value is 0.210, which is above 0.05. This means that there is no significant difference in the level of satisfaction when grouped according to sex. Okay? So, kasi ang p-value na, because the p-value is above 0.05. So, even if there is a variance from with the male having 3.95 mean score and female having 3.22, but based on the independent sample t-test result, it revealed that the p-value is above 0.05. And since that is above 0.05, above 0.05, then we can say that there is no significant difference in the level of satisfaction of customers when grouped according to sex. In other words, so what does it mean? In other words, the level of satisfaction of customers regardless of gender are most likely the same. So kahit babae ka or lalaki ka, they have the same level of satisfaction. So that is the meaning of this particular result. To check for normality, okay, you can just check this one. In fact, we can check for normality. Okay? Ito, Shapiro-Wilk. Okay, so there is a, if the p-value is above 0.05, I mean less than 0.05 or equal, if that is um, significant, then there is a problem of normality. I mentioned a while ago, because we have small sample size, there could be a problem on normal distribution. But in that particular case, supposedly we cannot use independent t-test because there is a group having a Shapiro-Wilks test that is significant. Itong male, it's 0.001. It's less than 0.05. That would mean it's significant. Then there is a deviation from normality. So that is why supposedly we cannot use independent t-test, but let's just assume that the data is normal. This can be a result of smaller sample size, 27 lang siya. And of course, in the distribution, also in the data, that can also be one of the factors. And at the same time, these are just imaginary data. So, hindi naman ito based from a survey that is conducted. So, that can be one of the reason na hindi din ito normally distributed. Now, supposedly, if that is not normal, we cannot use the independent t-test, but meron test dito na Mann-Whitney test. So the Mann-Whitney test is the non-parametric equivalent. Okay, it's the non-parametric equivalent of independent t-test. Pero we'll just discuss that one in the next meeting. So, although we assume that it's the data is normal, so let's just have this kind of test. Okay? Any question? Again, independent t-test, you compare the outcome of two independent groups. If you want to compare more than two groups, okay? If you want to compare more than two groups, then you will now use the analysis of variance. The assumption is the same. Nag-iba lang siya doon sa aspect ng comparing more than two groups, itong ANOVA. So assumption of ANOVA, still the same. DV must be continuous. The IB should consist of more than two. Dapat more than two na ito because ANOVA ito. More than two categorical independent groups. And then, the DB should be approximately normally distributed. So now let's test the educational attainment using the analysis of variance. Okay? Let's compare the satisfaction when grouped according to educational attainment. So, the same research question, is there a significant difference in the satisfaction of customers when grouped according to educational attainment? Okay. So it's more than two groups, elementary, high school, and college. We cannot utilize the independent t-test. We will use the ANOVA, analysis of variance. You just have to click ANOVA and click in the classical ANOVA. Place the education in the fixed factors. Yan. And then place the satisfaction in the dependent variable. Okay, all right. And then you can display the descriptive statistics. Let's look at the descriptive statistics. Tatlong grupo ito. The second table, you can see in the right, the output view. The second table, we have the educational attainment and the mean and standard deviation per group. So it shows here that elementary have the highest, okay, satisfaction score with a value of 4.44. Then we have college with a value of 2.96 and high school 1.63. But although we have this variance of scores, of mean scores per group, the only way we can say that they are significantly different from each other, you look at the first table, which is the ANOVA table. So ang kaibahan nito, the ANOVA has F value and P value. T-test, T value yan siya. So the results of ANOVA has a P value of less than 0.001. Okay, less than 0.05 ito. So since the P value is less than 0.05, this means that there is a significant difference in the satisfaction of the customers when grouped according to educational attainment. Okay, merong kaibahan. Merong kaibahan ang kanilang satisfaction between the groups. Kasi because the p-value is less than 0.05. Always remember that the p-value is our basis if we will accept or reject the null hypothesis. Our null hypothesis here that there is no significant difference in the level of satisfaction of customers when grouped according to educational attainment. That's our null hypothesis. But since our ANOVA is significant, we reject the null hypothesis because the results show that there is a significant difference in the level of satisfaction of customers when grouped according to educational attainment. So there is a difference between the groupings when it comes to satisfaction. Now, if the ANOVA is significant, then we have to do a follow-up test. We call that one as post-hoc test. Okay? If always remember that if the ANOVA is significant, we need to perform post-hoc test. A post-hoc test is a pairwise comparison between group or multiple comparison. We wanted to compare kasi ang tanong diyan, which among the groupings have significant difference? Is it those customer at elementary level and college level, between college and elementary, between elementary and high school, or between college and high school? So we want to know that because ang sinabi lang na ANOVA dito, there is a significant difference. So saan dito ang merong significant difference? So it needs further investigation. So to know which among the groupings have significant difference, then we have to perform the post-hoc test. So you click the post-hoc test, you place the education, okay? I'm sorry. So you place the education in the right box. Yan. So there are a lot of post-hoc tests. We have the Tukey, the Skiff, Bonferroni, the Net, Done, Games. Well, so Tukey is more conservative test. So let's utilize the Tukey test. Okay? Merong p-value of the Tukey test nandito sa pinaka-rightmost side. You can see at the rightmost side, the p Tukey. This is the p-value of Tukey. The same way of interpretation, whether they are significantly different or not. Okay? So, elementary versus high school. Elementary and high school, the p-value is less than 0.05. So, meaning there is a significant difference in the satisfaction of customers having having an educational attainment of elementary and high school level. Okay? With a p-value that is less than 0.05. By looking at the mean scores, those customers at elementary level have a mean of 4.44, which is higher higher when compared to the college. The high school, which is only 1.63. So that is the significant difference. Meaning, those with elementary level has higher satisfaction as compared to those at high school level.
And elementary and college, okay, the p-value is 0.02, which is less than 0.05. That would mean that there is a significant difference in the level of satisfaction, okay, between those at elementary and at college level. Looking at the mean score again, the elementary have higher mean satisfaction as compared to college uh, having a mean score of 2.96. Okay? So, itong grupo na ito ang merong significant difference, elementary and high school, and elementary and college, in which elementary have higher level of satisfaction when compared to high school and college level customers. On the other hand, between high school and college, sa baba you can see, okay, between high school and college, the results show a p-value of 0.08, which is above 0.05. This means that there is no significant difference in the level of satisfaction of customers at high school, between high school and college level. That would mean that their level of satisfaction, itong high school and college, are most likely the same.